Friends and supporters, my name is Eli Noller, Director of Community Relations here at Laniado Hospital in Netanya. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the annual gala tribute of the supporters of Laniado. This annual event has become an institution of its own, which everyone looks forward to. It is truly wonderful to be with friends from throughout the world here on Zoom, but I cannot tell you how sad I am not to see you all in person at our annual dinner. We have a special program for you, and I would like to thank the committee for their ongoing hard work and dedication. It is only appropriate to start the program with a special Chanukah lighting ceremony that took place here in the Pediatric Ward Activity Center in Laniado Hospital in Netanya.
Baruch atah Hashem, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher קידשנו במצוותיו, וציוונו להדליק נר של חנוכה. ברוך אתה השם אלוקינו מלך העולם, שעשה ניסים לאבותינו בימים ההם בזמן הזה.
The supporters of Laniado here in Netanya and throughout the world have much to be proud of. For many years, we have stood by the side of the hospital, supporting its development, making it into a leading regional medical center. Rabbi Marowitz, who has dedicated over 40 years to Laniado, has told me how years ago we were even called upon to purchase bare essentials such as large-sized pajamas, towels, and fans, all for the comfort of the patients. Today, there isn't an operating room, ward, or outpatient clinic in the entire hospital without the essential modern medical equipment, all purchased with the help of the supporters.
Ladies and gentlemen, as the CEO of Laniado Hospital, it is my honor to greet the friends and supporters of Laniado here in Israel and throughout the world. Tonight, Virtuous Gala is dedicated to building the new intensive care department which we needed so urgently. Every day is a challenging day in our hospital, especially this past year, fighting COVID-19. It was a very difficult challenge, however, knowing that I had dedicated partners around the world, such as yourself, gave me the strength to meet these challenges, to continue to expand and build for the future of this hospital. Your dedication is allowing us to open 3 new major projects in the coming weeks: the new birthing center, the new dialysis department, and the new neonatal intensive care unit. I thank you for your ongoing devotion to the people of Israel in general and to Laniado Hospital in particular. Thank you very much, and Chanukah Sameach.
Good evening, my dear friends, and a very happy Hanukkah to all of you. It is now more than 40 years that I have had the opportunity of addressing our annual dinner. This is a special year for me, as I will shortly be retiring from most of my work at the hospital and coming in only for special projects. But I want to thank all of you for the many years of support you've given to me and the help which you have enabled the organization to grow and develop. Initially, when I first came to Laniado Hospital, the role of the Netanya Supporters Group was to buy basic needs for the hospital, such as pajamas, sheets, pillowcases, covers, even fans, which were then needed. As we know, as 40 years ago, the hospital had no air conditioning. But thank God, I've watched how the hospital has grown, and now most of the money that the hospital, the Netanya supporters spend is for major items of equipment. And thank God, thanks to your support, we have bought many items in the Department of Surgery, in pediatrics, in every department. We are well respected. Everyone in the hospital, physicians, staff, are most appreciative for the help that you've given to them. So may I thank you for attending the Zoom dinner. I thank you for your being part of an organization which has done so much has done so much good for the hospital. Be well, and I hope that you will be able to continue your support to the person who will be taking over my position, Eli Nobla, who will be working with you. I'm certain that he will be successful and that you will enjoy working with him. Again, I wish you a happy Hanukkah and express my thanks to you for the help you gave me.
Still no sound. Cannot hear you.
Good evening, everyone, here in Israel and all our friends overseas. I'm Frances Plasko. I'm the chairperson of the supporters for Laniado Hospital here in Netanya. This year has been a particularly difficult year for us all, not only in Israel, but our many loyal supporters across the globe. Thank you for your generous support in the brochure and your donations, which this year will go towards the ICU department. My personal thanks go to Shlomi Gertner for allowing us to play his music and hear his beautiful singing. Thank you, Shlomi. My thanks are due to Rabbi Morowitz, Eli, Sue, Jeanette, and our treasurer, Joe Warnham, for their hard work. But last but no means least, I'd like to thank you all for your generous support, and my hope is that in the future that we'll be back to continue our fundraising activities in the usual manner. Thanks must go to the Supporters Board for helping us to make this evening's success. If any of you would like to join us, please don't hesitate, either phone me, Sue or Eli, and we'll only be too pleased to see you on our board. Before I end, I have a pleasant duty to perform, to pay tribute to our dear colleague and life president, Rabbi Natan Morowitz. He has been at the helm of our supporters for many, many years. Rabbi Morowitz has decided to retire, but I must emphasize it's not because I've been voted chairperson, it's not. I'm sure you would like to join me in wishing Rabbi Morowitz a long and healthy retirement. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all for your support. Chag Sameach and Chanukah Tov. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. These last few months have been beyond challenging here at Laniado Hospital. This year's campaign is dedicated to the building of the new General Intensive Care Department here at Laniado. This ambitious project, costing over $2.5 million, will increase our capacity from 6 to 24 ICU beds. It will quadruple the size of the department in square meters as well, allowing for optimum working conditions for the very specialized staff. During Chanukah, Laniado International is having a worldwide crowdfunding campaign for this project, the building of the new General Intensive Care Department. We, the supporters, are proud to be an integral part of it.
My dad was sick and he went from bad to worse in a very, very short space of time. And he just went downhill very, very quickly. But they were really persistent and they just kept trying. And then they found what it was and they treated, and he got better from an infection. And he ended up with another crazy fungal infection, which is so rare to have in your lungs because his immune system was so shot to pieces. And they persisted, and we'd be there and we'd be with Dad and we'd be talking to him, and in our hearts we believed that he could hear us. He was sedated, but all the nurses, and they would always say, talk to him, just talk to him, and speak to him, like he can hear you. And so that was also really comforting to us.
Just because they care about him. They care about a patient who's just another patient, but they're more than another patient. They're people, and they treat them as people, and they treat their families as people, and they just couldn't do enough, any of them. And all I can say is thank you to all of them, and they deserve a larger home to work in. They deserve a larger, better of everything. Desperately they need it. And just think of how many more lives we will be part of saving.
All these patients are somebody's brother, somebody's sister, a daughter, a son, mother or father, and we never thought we'd be in this position. So whatever you are going to give, it really counts, and just add an extra nought, or a couple of noughts on it.
Let's build together a new ICU department.
Hey, it's gonna be a brand new day. Make it yours to stay. A most wonderful display. A most wonderful display. I look up in the world and I see struggle, a brother in need. Then my heart just seems to go, looking for a guide in this big bubble. Oh, will I succeed? Who made the heavens all around me? I must know. But then I remember when, time and time again, the sun goes up and the sun comes down. He keeps the world going round and round. Now this big bubble with all its struggle, he makes it flow. The moon goes up and the moon comes down. He keeps the world going round and round. Now this big bubble with all its struggle, he makes it flow. Na 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 na, na 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 na. Have a little faith, yes, you'll enjoy the space, yes. This bubble's just for you. Na 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 na, na 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 na. Have a little faith, yes, you'll enjoy the space, yes. This bubble's just for you. I look up in the world and I am puzzled by the riddle of life. Then my heart just seems to go. I'm looking for a light inside this bubble, a star in the night. Who made the heavens all around me? I must know. But then I remember when, time and time again, the sun goes up and the sun comes down. He keeps the world going round and round. Now this big bubble with all its struggle, he makes it flow. The moon goes up and the moon comes down. He keeps the world going round and round. Now this big bubble with all its struggle, he makes it flow. Na 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 na, na 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 na. Have a little faith, yes, you'll enjoy the space, yes. This bubble's just for you. Na 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 na, round and round. Now this big bubble, with all its struggle, he makes it flow. The moon goes up and the moon comes down. He keeps the world going round and round. Now this big bubble, with all its struggle, he makes it flow. Na 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 na, na 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 na. Have a little faith, yes, you'll enjoy the space, yes. This bubble's just for you. Na 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 na, he makes it. Na 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 na. Have a little faith, yes, you'll enjoy the space, yes. This bubble's just for you. Hey, it's gonna be a brand new day. Make it yours to stay. Such a wonderful display. The most wonderful display.
Thank you very much. The song you just heard was sung by international Hasidic singer, Mr. Shlomi Gertner of London. Shlomi is a very good friend of Laniado. Unfortunately, he could not be with us here this evening, but he did send this important message to all of us throughout the world.
With a little bit of faith, we'll all be safe, we'll all be good. With a little bit of faith, we'll all be safe just like it should. With a little bit of faith, we'll all be safe if you believe. Oh yes, we all believe, we'll see Christ in His hand. Friends of Laniado, happy Chanukah, and welcome to an event so unique, an event full of light. So many of us feel this very strong connection to the Laniado Hospital. For me, this is a connection I grew up with. Like many of you, we would travel to the beautiful seafront and past the hospital. I would always hear about the history of what triggered the Rebbe of Tzanz to dedicate his life and so much time to build the Laniado. It was during the war, and we're talking a Rebbe who lost his wife and 11 children. He said if he survives the war, he would do something that would help people, would help save people, no matter their background. Just like in the war, everyone was a target, no matter their background. And so he did. He built the hospital, a center that shines light throughout the region. On various occasions, I've been to visit the hospital, to sing for patients, to cheer them up, and to bring them light. It's now during the Chag of Light, where each and every one of you can shine a light and save a life. This is a beautiful moment for all of us to zoom in together on this beautiful chesed. A chesed of so much quality, something unique and special. Wishing you all a happy Chanukah with smiles, health and wealth. And remember, it's an honor to be a friend of Laniado. Chag Sameach.
Thank you, Shlomi. This week, Jews throughout the world celebrate Chanukah and the Chanukah miracle. But here at Laniado, we celebrate miracles every day of the week and every week of the year. We have with us this evening Mr. Nachshon Meir, an Israeli tour guide and educator, who will enlighten us about the untold story of Chanukah. I turn the baton over to Mr. Nachshon Meir. Nachshon?
Hello, Eli. It's a pleasure to be here tonight, and let's start. So 1 second, I'm just going to share my screen with you. Do you see? Is my screen shared?
Yes, it is. Yes, we see it.
Okay, very good. So good evening to everyone. It's really a pleasure for me to join you tonight for this Really exciting event. My name is Nachshon Meir. I'm a tour guide in Israel. I'm also an educator in a school in Ra'anana. And what I want us to do tonight is actually three things. First thing is to see and visit some sites in Israel that have to do with the Chanukah story. Second thing is to tell a slightly less known version of the Chanukah story. And the third thing, hopefully we'll have time for, is to get to a new period in time where the story of Chanukah was revived again. Okay, so let's jump into into a few introductions. Right? One second, I think I'm going to. Okay. So the first thing we have to do is basically understand what our main source is for the Chanukah story. We have no book of the Bible, no Masechet in the Talmud that tells us the story of the Chanukah. But what we do have is what we can see here on our left. We can see that we have the book of the Maccabees. This is a book that was not canonized into our Bible, but it was canonized into the Christian Bible. And basically our friends, the Christians, they preserved the story of Chanukah for us. This book was translated only in the 1930s to Hebrew. And if you read it, it's very similar to the stories of Tanakh. The psukim are very similar, and the narrative is very similar. So if we want to tell the story, we have to decide where to start from, right? So I'm going to start my story from the time that the religious decrees started and were given to the Jews by the Greeks, by King Antiochus IV. And I want to notice one interesting thing. When the Greeks decided to put these decrees on the Jews, they aimed at the core of the Jewish being. And they aimed at the core mitzvot, which were Shabbat, Kashrut, Brit Milah, learning Torah. Does it sound familiar to any of us? Of course it does. That's because till this day, those in many eyes are the core mitzvot. But when the Greeks hit those core mitzvot, and when those decrees came upon the Jews, that was a good enough reason to start a revolt. And let's zoom in to the first building where the war between the Jews and the Greeks started. What you see before you is the Khakra Fortress. The Khakra Fortress that was built right next to the Temple Mount. Archaeologists have a disagreement exactly where it was. On the left here, you can see the southern wall. We know the Kotel HaMaravi, the western wall. This is the southern wall. So some archaeologists claim that the Khakra was built right next to the southern wall of Temple Mount. Others claim that it was built in Chenyon Givati, that is right across from the city of David. Either way, we're speaking about a humongous fortress that was built right next to the Temple Mount, and it had two purposes. The first purpose was a political purpose. Greek forces were in there, and they were in there in order to control the Temple Mount and what was going on in Jerusalem. But it had another purpose. Greek priests were in there, and there were idolship work. There were idols in there, and altars. And not only that, but also Greek culture was brought from this fortress into Jerusalem and ultimately into the land of Israel. In year 167 BC, on the 25th of Kislev, Kafhei Kislev, from this fortress, Greek troops came in to Bet HaMikdash, into Kodesh HaKodashim, placed the statue of Zeus, and brought sacrifices in his name. Now I want you to remember this fortress, because as long as this fortress in Jerusalem is standing, there is no Jewish sovereignty in the land of Israel. So what are the options for the Jews when these decrees come about? So, of course, we know of the Mityavnim, right? The Mityavnim, those that adapt to Greek culture, look like Greeks, speak like Greeks, have names like Greeks. And we know of other Jews that they decided to preserve and protect their Jewish identity and ultimately die in the name of God. And they were willing to lamut al kiddush Hashem, as we know that phrase from the Talmud. But in the book of Maccabees, we hear terrible stories of two women that decided to give a brit milah to their babies, and they were caught by the Greek troops and thrown off the walls of Jerusalem. And many, many Jews went and they hid in the mountains and in the caves of the Judean desert. And there's one story of 1,000 people that were in a cave, and on Shabbat, Greek troops came close to the cave and they said, "Hey, you Jews, come out here and obey the king's laws." And the Jews answered, "Nor will we come out. We won't come out, and we won't even come out to fight you, because we don't want to break Shabbat. We are willing to die in the name of God. Lamut al kiddush Hashem." And at that Shabbat, 1,000 people, men, women, and children, were slaughtered like cattle. Now there was one man and his family in a small town between Yafo and Yerushalayim that he thought differently. His name was Matityahu Mimodiin. So I think the first question that we have to ask is, we have this city of Modi'in that's about 20 years old. Why was it called Modi'in? Where do we know that the city of Modi'in is in the area of Modi'in from the time of the Maccabees? So what we see here on our right is actually an Arab village close to the town of Hashmonaim called El Media, the village of El Media. And archaeologists claim, through findings that they found around the village as well, that this name preserves the name Modi'in. In many, many, many places in Israel, we have to thank the Arabs for preserving our original names around the country and around the land. What we see here on the left is actually a very, very interesting building that was found in the ancient city of Modi'in. It's right outside of the Buchma neighborhood in Modi'in. And what you see before you is actually a synagogue from the 3rd century BC. Now, some of you might be sitting at home and thinking, wait, if it's the 3rd century BC, so that means that Beit HaMikdash was still standing. And yes, Beit HaMikdash was still standing. So what do we need a synagogue for? So here we can actually find that our answer in the Hebrew name of the synagogue, a Bet Knesset. The original idea of a synagogue was kinus, was gathering not to pray, but rather to make important decisions, to learn Torah and learn the mitzvot. And that's why this building on the left is shaped in a square in order for people to face each other. Until this day, those that go to the Sephardi shuls will see that people are facing each other. That's something and the Sephardi shuls are basically shaped according to this original type of synagogue back then. Till now in Israel, less than 10 synagogues from that time have been revealed. Okay, let's get back to our story. So apparently, close to this synagogue, or in a other main area in Modi'in, Greek troops approach. And they look for the high priest. And they say, "Hey, Matityahu HaKohen, you come here. You're the high priest of this town. We want you to be the first one to bring your sacrifice to Zeus." Matityahu, of course, disobeys. He doesn't agree. So what do? They take someone else, a Mityavin. Remember those people that adapted to Greek culture. And in a split second, Matityahu decides to do a remarkable thing. He takes a knife a small knife that was hidden under his dress. He stabs the man, and at once, him and his 5 children, his 5 sons, attack the Greek forces, and the revolt begins. But what do they do next? Next, they flee. the first thing they have to do is run away from their town. But not only do they run away from their town, on the left here we can see Modi'in. We can see that Modi'in is in the lowlands of Israel, in the Shfela, and they flee to the mountains, to the area of Bet El. In the mountains, they can hide. In the mountains, it's very hard for the Greeks to fight them. The Greeks are used to fighting a proper army. But this, in the mountains of Israel, you can't fight a proper army. It's not a plateau. And they're trying to gather men. They can maybe they gather maybe a few hundred, and not a long time passes, and Matityahu is sick, and he dies. But before he dies, he puts Yehuda in charge. Yehuda HaMaccabee. By the way, Jewish tradition has it that Yehuda HaMaccabee, Maccabee was actually just his nickname. And where did it come from? In this picture, you can see that the Jew has a hammer. So Maccabee actually comes from the word makevet, which means a hammer. And Jewish tradition has it that Yehuda used to fight with this hammer. Maybe he didn't even have a weapon until his first battle. In his first battle against Apollonius, when it was still not many Greeks were fighting them, a few hundred versus a few hundred, Yehuda Maccabee wins. He takes the sword of Apollonius, just like David took the sword of Goliath so many years ago. And I want us now to speak about the first 4 battles of the Maccabees where Yehuda led them to victory. And these first 4 battles, by the way, after them, we'll see that this is when we celebrate Chanukah. But if we would stop here, it's not the end of the story. So let's move to the map where we can see our 4 battles. Our first battle is in Ma'ale Levona. Our second battle in Bet Horon. Our third battle in Emmaus, which is next to Park Canada of today. And our fourth battle in Bet Sur, which is right near Bethlehem. We need to notice a few things. First of all, notice that all of these battles are close to Jerusalem. Second of all, these battles took place from north to south. 1, 2, 3, 4. From north to south. And every battle, the Greek troops grew. If in Ma'ale Levona it was just a few hundred, in Bet Horon it was already a few thousands. And in Emmaus, in Park Canada, it was already tens of thousands. And in Bethlehem, in the fourth battle, it was already 60,000. And how many soldiers did Yehuda have at the time? In Ma'ale Levona, maybe a few hundred. In Park Canada, in Emmaus, the next battle that we're going to zoom into, he had about 3,000. In order to really speak about this third battle, that's maybe the most known out of all of the Maccabees battles, I want us to zoom in and actually visit our next site. We are now at the Valley of Ayalon.
The Greek general Georgias, him with his 40,000 soldiers and 7,000 horsemen were camping in this valley. My soldiers and I, much fewer than them, we were camping in the mountains in Nabi Samuel. And I heard of Georgias's plan. He was planning to outflank us from the south with his 5,000 most the Greek general Georgias was planning to outflank us from the south with his 5,000 most strongest and bravest soldiers. He thought that we would run, and that's exactly what I told my soldiers that I want him to think. I said, everyone stop what you're doing. Leave the fire as it is. Leave the camp as it is, and come with me. Let them think that we fled. Let them think we ran away. But what we were really doing is we were outflanking them from the north. And Georgias, as he thought, arrived to this camp, and he knew, okay, Judah the Maccabee fled, he ran away. But what they didn't know is that when we arrived at their camp, me and my brothers, from 4 corners, at once we attacked, and with no commander, they had no chance, and they all ran away. And when sunrise came, and Georgias was coming back down from the mountain, and he thought that he had won, he saw his fire, he saw his camp up in flames.
Okay, so as we saw, this was the 3rd battle of the Maccabees, led by Yehuda Maccabee. And after the 4th battle, which is interesting, tonight is also the 4th night of Chanukah, that is when the Maccabees were able to re-enter Beit HaMikdash. This is when, we celebrate Chanukah. When did the Maccabees enter Beit HaMikdash? When did they light the menorah? According to the book of the Maccabees, on Kafhei de Kislev, 164 BC, exactly 3 years after that statue of Zeus was put into Kodesh HaKodashim. But what's remarkable is actually that in the book of the Maccabees, the whole story about the miracle with the oil that lasted for 8 days doesn't appear at all. So why do we celebrate for 8 nights? It actually has to do with the name Chanukah. The name Chanukah in Hebrew means to inaugurate, to re-inaugurate Beit HaMikdash. Just like Moshe, back in the time of the Mishkan, had an inauguration for 8 days. That was the time of the process of the inauguration. So too, the Maccabees, when they reached Beit HaMikdash, they had an inauguration, a Chanukat Habayit. And that is why we celebrate for 8 days, according to the book of the Maccabees. And what does Yehuda do after he reaches Beit HaMikdash? He gathers his troops and he says, okay, everyone, we have reached our goal. We came back to Beit HaMikdash. We purified Beit HaMikdash. You can all go home. These people, these men haven't been with their family and wives for months, maybe years. And in Yehuda's eyes, he has reached his goal. But what about the Khakra, that fortress that we spoke about in the beginning? It was still standing. Still standing. There were still Greek forces in the Khakra. And from now on, our story goes downhill. So let's take a look at the next 4 battles of the Maccabees, where again Yehuda HaMaccabee is leading them. This time, our battles start from the south and go up to the north. And again, all around, all focused on Yerushalayim. And what do you think the Greeks thought about the Jews reconquering the Temple Mount and purifying the temple? Did they say, okay, we lost? No, they got angry. They wanted revenge. And if till now there were only soldiers and horsemen, in this 5th battle that happened in Bet Zachariah, next to the Jewish town of Elazar of today, the Greeks brought elephants into battle. And Elazar, Yehuda's brother, when he was trying to kill who he thought was the commander in the Greek forces, he was crushed by an elephant. And that's why today the town of Elazar in Gush Etzion is called Elazar. I'm skipping the 6th and 7th battle that happened in Giv'on and near the Arab town Bitunia, that is next to 443. And I'm skipping to our 8th battle, in a battle called the Battle of El Asa, next to the Arab city called Ramallah. Yehuda was caught by surprise. He was only able to gather about 800 men, and in front of him, on the other side of the mountain, Bakchides, the Greek general, had with him 20,000 men and 2,000 horsemen. Yehuda knew that he had no chance. His men were afraid. They wanted to flee. And what he told them, he said, if our time be come, let us die manfully for our brethren, and let us not stain our honor. And with these words, he ran and charged into battle, a battle that he did not return from. Again, a battle that he did not return from. Yehuda Maccabee dies in the battlefield. His army is wiped out, and the Maccabees' revolt is suppressed. if we would stop here, we would not have 8 nights of celebration, but rather 8 nights of mourning. But Baruch Hashem, thankfully, the story does not end here. And thankfully, Yehuda was not the only talented Maccabee. The next Maccabee that takes charge, and of course, again, Maccabee was Yehuda's nickname, then it became the name of all Beit Hashmonai. So the next Maccabee that takes charge is Yonatan. And what Yonatan does, him and his brother Shimon, the only Maccabees left, they gather their troops and they start in a guerrilla warfare throughout the country, trying to tire out the Greek forces. And after 2 years, they have the chance of returning to Yerushalayim. But do they rush to Beit HaMikdash? No. They get to Beit HaMikdash and they leave Yerushalayim. They don't enter Yerushalayim for 7 years. And where do they base themselves? In this place on the left, in the area of Michmash. Again, we have an Arab village called Michmas that preserves the name, and today we have a Jewish town called Michmash. It's northern to Yerushalayim, and for 7 years, what Yonatan does is he builds an army. Yonatan understands that Yehuda made a mistake. Yehuda, in front of Yehuda's eyes, was only the religious goal. That was his goal. All of his wars were focused Yerushalayim. Once he got to Yerushalayim, he set his soldiers free and counted only on the reserves. But Yonatan understands we can't go to Yerushalayim before we have Jewish sovereignty, before we have an independent state. And as you can see here on the map, he expands the borders of Israel. And different than Yehuda, for instance, when Yehuda hears about Jews being ambushed in the Golan and the Galil, he calls them into Yerushalayim. He says, come, here is safe. But Yonatan does differently. Yonatan goes out and he strikes. And he understands that before the religious goal, he needs to accomplish the national goal. And before I speak about how Yonatan's life ended, I want to share with you a small anecdote. Many of you recognize this man on the right, Yoni Netanyahu, right? Of course, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's brother, that was the commanding officer of Mivtza Entebbe and was killed in this operation. And he was actually named after Yonatan HaMaccabee. And why is that? Because his father, Ben Zion Netanyahu Zichrono Livracha, he was a big historian, and he knew who the true hero in the story of Chanukah was. Not Yehuda, but rather Yonatan. Yonatan that led the revolt for 18 years. Yehuda led it for 7, and Yonatan led the revolt for 18 years. But after 18 years, in the city of Akko that you can see here on the left, he came to meet with a Greek general named Tryphon. He thought that he was signing a peace treaty with him. Tryphon captivated him, demanded money. He received the money from Shimon, but still murdered Yonatan in front of Shimon's eyes. And Shimon, the last Maccabee alive, only he was the one that was able to really end this revolt. In total, we have a revolt of 25 years, not of 8 days, not of 3 years, of 25 years. Only after that, a year after Yonatan was murdered, Shimon was able to use the army that Yonatan built and do 3 things. He was able to free the Jews from taxes. He was able to destroy the Khakra Fortress that was controlling Beit HaMikdash for all these years. And he was anointed as Kohen Gadol and as the king by the people. And that is how the Maccabees revolt ended, when they finally had and were able to establish a Jewish independent state. Now I want to fast forward about 2,000 years, when again the Jews were looking for a state of their own in the land of Israel. In the beginning of the of the Zionist movement, people were looking for heroes. They were in a desperate search for heroes. And why is that? Because in Tanakh, we have spiritual heroes, but not many freedom fighters. So suddenly stories like Bar Kokhba that you can see here on the left, and the story of Metzadah, the tragic story of Metzadah, suddenly these came about. Youth movements, used to visit Metzadah, and Lag BaOmer, we celebrate suddenly Bar Kokhba's forces. But the main reason is because people were desperate for freedom fighters, for heroes to look up to, Jewish heroes to look up to, even if they didn't agree fully with the actual story. And of course, naturally, which heroes found their way into their hearts of the Zionists? Of course, the Maccabees. I want to share with you two examples that really show how the story of the Maccabees found its way into the hearts of the Zionists. Again, many of them not necessarily religious. Here on the left, we see a special flower that was named in the early 1900s, Dam HaMaccabim, the blood of the Maccabees. And the legend behind this flower is that in every place in Israel where the Maccabees' blood was spilt, this flower grows. What's special about it is that the red color doesn't fade away. Some of you might recognize this flower because it's on the sticker that we have on Yom HaZikaron. On our right here, we see the site of Kivrot HaMaccabim, the Maccabees' graves. That is right outside of Modi'in, next to Tzomet Shilat. Now, how do we know that the Maccabees are actually buried there? Until today, people come and visit this site. There are a few caves with graves there, but how do we know that the Maccabees are actually buried there? So an interesting story is told by a man named Zerubbabel Chaviv. When he was just a little boy, a teenager, him and his few friends and teachers came from the Hebrew Gymnasium Herzliya in Tel Aviv, and they were on a mission. They were on a hike looking for the graves of the Maccabees. And they came to our area, right, this area of Modi'in, and they found an Arab worker, and they said, "When Kuber El Yahud, where can I find where can we find graves of Jews?" And the Arab worker, he thought to himself, and he said, "Kuber El Yahud, Ehon, yeah, you can find Jewish graves over here." And then Zerubbabel Chaviv says, at that night, we lit a candle, and by singing and dancing, we declared that we have found the graves of the Maccabees. That just shows you how desperate these people we were, to find heroes to look up to. But not only was Chanukah a chag that was emphasized in the Zionist movement, but also the narrative, or maybe the essential narrative of Chanukah, was changing. Many, many songs, Chanukah songs, were written. Some of them are neutral, Savivon, Sof, 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 but some of them are literally changing the main narrative. If till now the main narrative of Chanukah is, that a miracle happened and that is how we won, many songs are saying the opposite and focusing on the heroism of the Maccabees. This is what the song I'm bringing you here is probably the most provocative song that was written in the 1930s by an army officer in the educational division. And this is what he says: "A miracle did not happen to us. We did not find a jug of oil. In the rock we carved to blood. Let there be light." And many, many songs like these. But the truth is, the story of the Maccabees didn't end 2,000 years ago. It also didn't end 100 and 150 years ago. Till today, the Maccabees surround us everywhere we go. If we go to the doctor, if we go to a basketball or soccer game, if we participate in a youth movement, and even if we go to the Jewish Olympics called the Maccabeah, we will always find this myth guiding us everywhere we go. And with that, I would actually want to wish you all Chanukah Sameach, and really tell you that I'm very happy that I was here with you tonight, and want to hear a few questions if you have. Eli, you're on mute. Still on mute? Okay.
Thank you very much, Nachshon, for this very interesting presentation. Anyone that would like to ask a short question, please just raise your hand and we will unmute you. Any questions about Chanukah? Any questions about the interesting presentation that we just saw here with the untold story of Chanukah? Okay, if not, then we'll say thank you very much, Nachshon, for this fascinating information that you gave us here in honor of Chanukah. Here at the supporters, we have made significant contributions to building the soon-to-be opened ultra-modern birthing rooms, the dialysis department, and the neonatal intensive care unit. Many more ambitious projects here at Laniado are on the drawing board, and we are depending on the partnership of the partners throughout the world to allow them to become a reality. We should all be proud to be an integral part of Laniado and the Laniado family. People dedicated to working towards the health and well-being of over 500,000 people in Israel of all backgrounds. Shlomi Gertner with another exciting song.
Hey, everybody come along for the ride. Hey, are you really gonna stay inside? Yeah, put your hands in the air. Yeah, we're going somewhere. Hey, everybody come along for the ride. Hey, are you really gonna stay inside? Yeah, put your hands in the air. Oh yeah, we're gonna be there. Life is tough, times are rough. So much stuff is going on. Leave it to Hashem, He's the one in control. Tensions high, pressure rise. You can leave it all behind. Let a new dimension take hold. Feel a different beat, yeah. Springs under your feet, yeah. Troubles melt like snow. Let it go. Oh, hey, everybody come along for the ride. Hey, are you really gonna stay inside? Yeah. Put your hands in the air, yeah, we're going somewhere. Hey, everybody come along for the ride. Hey, are you really gonna stay inside? Yeah, put your hands in the air, oh yeah, we're gonna be there. Ride on the feeling, break through the ceiling, happy and free. Ride on the feeling, break through the ceiling, happy and free. Life is great, celebrate. Take the time to meditate. Nothing's gonna run away so easy, my friend. Find release, inner peace. Slow down the velocities. It's gonna be alright in the end. Feel a different beat, yeah. Springs under your feet, yeah. Troubles melt like snow. Let it go. Hey, everybody come along for the ride. Hey, are you really gonna stay inside? Yeah, put your hands in the air. Yeah, we're gonna be there. Hey, everybody come along for the ride. Hey, are you really gonna stay inside? Yeah, put your hands in the air. Oh yeah, we're gonna be there. Ride on the feeling, break through the ceilings, happy and free. Ride on the feeling, break through the ceiling, happy and free, happy and free. Hey, everybody come along for the ride. Hey, are you really gonna stay inside? Yeah, put your hands in the air. Yeah, we're going somewhere. Hey, everybody come along for the ride. Hey, are you really gonna stay inside? Yeah, put your hands
Thank you, Shlomi Gertner, for a very uplifting Chanukah song. This year's online event has been quite different than previous years, but we hope you have enjoyed. Indeed, our venue has changed, our format has changed, our world has changed. What has not changed is your generosity, your compassion, your love of Israel, and Laniado's many, many needs in order to continue growing. We thank those of you who have already contributed to the building of the new intensive care department via adverts in our online brochure that will be coming out very shortly and sent to you via email. For those of you who have not yet had a chance to participate, we urge you to please do so today via one of the tax-deductible methods from wherever you are in the world. Be our partners in saving lives and shining a light this Hanukkah. Now, to conclude, we have a special message from the head nurse in the intensive care department.
Hello, my name is Lydia Langsner. I'm the head nurse of the intensive care unit of Laniado Hospital over 20 years. I see my role as the head nurse to be that go-between the family and the first time they come into the ICU to explain what the monitor is all about, the sound that they hear, and that same loved one who was a functional person is now laid up, sedated. To them, it's a great shock. One of the cases that I remember that really strikes out in my mind is the story of a young 40-year-old garage repairman known in this community who just went out on his motorcycle to buy a part and unfortunately was involved in a very, very critical car accident. When he arrived to the hospital, he was taken immediately for damage control surgery in the operating room, and from there was passed over to us in the ICU. The shock of the family, of the surrounding in the ICU was enormous. The only screams I could hear is save him, and maybe transport him to a bigger center, to a major center, because this is such a small hospital, and look at the building, and look at the waiting room, and look at the ICU. And upon that they judge what the quality of care will be. That is one of my major roles, is to calm the family, to make them understand that right now this is the best care that can be given in any center in the world. And that's what these patients need right now. To be a staff person in the intensive care unit is to be a professional, to be stubborn in the care you give, not to have any compromise in whatever you carry out, to give the best quality care possible to the patient, to fight for him day in and day out until you reach your goal. Let's build together a new intensive care unit.
Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Thank you for joining us. We wish you a happy Hanukkah from us here at Laniado to all our friends and supporters throughout the world.